Weirdly, I think the move away from teams having a closer in baseball makes a lot of sense. But with that having been said, it seems like the Kraken could use one. I don't know what that would look like in hockey, but yeah. What's cracking, everybody, and welcome back to Kraken R&R, where the Seattle Kraken lose after coming back to take the lead in overtime to the Dallas Stars 4-3. So yeah, the Kraken still do get a point out of this game, and that's certainly better than nothing, especially with Edmonton losing, even though Vegas seems like they're starting to run away with things in the Pacific. But especially with them completing another comeback late in this game, it would have been nice to see them, after taking the lead, actually hold on to it in the final couple of minutes. Once again, they fail to do that and give away that second point. And yes, at this point it is also true that the Kraken would have to completely fall apart like the Jets have and royally screw up the rest of the season to not make the playoffs, especially considering the Flames can't even beat the Ducks at this point. But there still is a lot up for grabs when it comes to seeding. Sure, Vegas now has a fairly healthy lead on the Kraken as far as first place in the Pacific Division and Western Conference, but it's still within reach if the Kraken can finish strong the rest of the way, which should be doable with the easier schedule that they have. But it's not going to happen if they can't finish games like these last couple. But anyway, since this is the first of back-to-back games against Dallas, not in back-to-back days, although we do lose an hour tonight and it's already getting pretty late, so it's basically back-to-back days. Okay, that's not really how it works. But anyway, back-to-back games and the Kraken lose another one in disappointing fashion. So let's just get right into the game, where actually they do get off to a pretty good start, having a good push in the first couple minutes of this game, which is unfortunately brought to an end by a Dallas power play. A power play that the Kraken kill off pretty well for the first minute, and then the Stars kill off the rest of it themselves by drawing a call, or going to the box anyway. The Kraken draw the call to go to 4-on-4 for a minute, then the Kraken have a minute of power play. None of that goes anywhere, and pretty much none of the rest of this first period goes anywhere, as we do end this first period with the score still tied at 0. Which isn't necessarily to say that neither team had good scoring chances in this first period. Actually, both teams had a couple, but Ottinger made a couple of nice saves on the Kraken, and then at the other end of the ice, while Dallas was able to set up some good plays, they just weren't able to finish with that one last pass. Actually, throughout this game, having a number of chances where they would pass it to a spot that if a guy had been there, they would have had an easy goal, but they just couldn't connect that last pass. Grubauer also had some good saves throughout the game, but yeah, it was kind of a okay game for him in all. Regardless, though, after a still pretty low event first period, all things considered, which did make it feel like a little bit more of a classic Dallas Stars game, maybe not so much this season, where they've started to score a little bit more than we've been used to over the last few years. To start out the second period, the Kraken are starting to build some momentum. But eventually, a few minutes in, against the flow of play, the Kraken have a breakdown in their defensive zone, really the first bad one of the game, which allows kind of a 3-on-1. I mean, thanks to Soucy falling, there are 3 Stars players closer to the Kraken net than the second closest Kraken player, which is still Soucy, leaving Schultz by himself. And the pass gets from one side to the other, leaving Grubauer completely out to dry, and it's a tap-in goal on basically an empty net, which Grubauer, to his credit, nearly makes a spectacular diving glove save, as he does get a bit of his glove on it, but it still finds the back of the net to give the Stars the 1-0 lead. At the very least, though, the Kraken do prevent the Stars from building any momentum off of this goal, and in fact, keep the momentum going towards the Dallas net, which was important, as it seemed like it was going to be pretty hard for the Kraken to even get on the board in this game. Not only because Ottinger is a good goaltender and was playing well to this point, but also because the Stars were making it very hard for the Kraken to get much of anything going in the offensive end. Playing with one of their forwards pretty deep into the defensive end whenever the Kraken got control of the puck in the neutral zone, really hindering the Kraken forecheck, which has been a big part of getting their offense going all season long. Eventually, though, the Kraken are able to get control of that offensive end, and it's a done shot from right down the middle up by the blue line that's tipped not once, but twice in front of the net, first by Beniers, then Eberle, and past Ottinger to get the Kraken on the board and tie this game at 1. And once again, with a goaltender playing as well as he was, and really no rebounds going to Kraken players as he was controlling his rebounds pretty well, there's again those 2 ways to beat a goaltender playing this well with the defensive support that he had. either one, take away his eyes with the screen in front of him, or two, change the trajectory of the puck right in front of him, and that's what the Kraken do here. Actually, they kind of do both, as both Beniers and Eberle are stacked right in front of him. He still does see the shot coming, but they both manage to get a stick on it. Although I have to say, after having, again, watched the replay a couple of times, I still don't know where Eberle ends up hitting it. But as they go to the bench, Eberle's the first one there, and although Beniers originally got credit for this goal, which would have been his 20th of the season, it is Eberle who eventually gets the credit for it. Beniers just gets a primary assist with a tip. Not too often you get a tip standing right out in front of the net and get a primary assist out of it, but that's what Beniers gets here. Unfortunately for the Kraken, though, although they are able to keep the game tied for a few more minutes, so it's not a quick response goal, eventually Dallas has two can play that game as they win a faceoff in the Kraken end, and it's a shot not actually on goal, it's going well wide of the net, but Marchment is able to put his stick way out, get just the tip of the blade on it, which is enough to deflect it on net and just into the corner before Grubauer can close off that side, as he himself was screened by just about every other player on the ice, and it takes him a while to see that the shot even happened, and by the time he does and starts to get over to the side, that tip has the puck going right into the corner of the net to give the Stars back the lead. And again, in a game where it seemed like points were going to be at a premium, this was a tough one to go in, as it seemed like there was a decent chance it could be the game winner. It was going to be hard for either team, but obviously we want the Kraken to score that second goal to tie the game at the very least and get it to overtime. And that feeling only continued, as although there were a couple of chances either way over the next minute or two, eventually the last 7 minutes of this period and then the first 5 minutes of the third period didn't even feature a single shot on net between the two teams, as it stayed 17 shots for Dallas, 23 for the Kraken for over 12 minutes of game time. And all things considered, pretty incredible streak there of no shots on goal that eventually comes to an end with Dallas getting the shot on goal, which Grubauer makes the save on, and then very shortly after that, the Kraken are going to get 4 minutes of power play, as once again, one of their lead defensemen is left bleeding from his face. This time it's Larson, though, and this time it actually draws the call, and draws all 4 minutes of the call. The Kraken, though, against one of the best penalty kills the NHL has to offer in the Stars, are not able to score on that 4-minute power play, although they do set up in the offensive end and get a couple of shots on net. They just aren't able to get another one past Ottinger or get any rebounds for those second opportunities that can be the dangerous ones. The Kraken, though, are at least able to keep possession of the puck and get it back into the offensive end after the power play comes up empty. And eventually, they do end up getting a rebound as a shot on net by Susi goes right to a Kraken player. It's Daniel Sprong, and he also can't get the puck into the back of the net as his rebound attempt is saved off the pad of Ottinger. But then it rebounds again to another Kraken player. This time it's Ryan Donato. And while Ottinger can't seem to find the puck, I don't really know where he thought it went here, but he's clearly looking the other direction. Donato, from just a couple of feet in front of him, winds up like he's taking a one-timer from the faceoff dot and fires it through the 5-hole of Ottinger into the back of the net to tie the game at 2. So, go figure, once again, after being scratched for a couple of games, his first game back in the lineup, there's Ryan Donato scoring another goal, as he always seems to do after coming back into the lineup. Of course, just a couple games ago, Sprong did the same thing, so maybe that's just the trend for Kraken players as you score a goal after you get scratched. And if that is the case, I guess we'll see if Geeky can keep it up whenever he returns, as he was the one that ended up getting scratched in this one. Now, after this goal is scored, the Kraken don't give up a quick response goal, but boy did it seem like they were trying to, as the Stars got a number of very good scoring opportunities that they again just aren't able to connect on that last pass to get what on a couple of chances would have been easy goals with cross-crease passes, defensive breakdowns. Grubauer was left out to dry a couple of times. One of them ends up going off the post, I think. Either way, the Kraken defensively were lucky to escape the next couple of minutes without allowing the Stars to retake the lead. And eventually, the Kraken end up getting another power play, which this time they do actually end up scoring on it, which, I guess, spoiler alert, they do take the lead 3-2 in this game. But how they end up doing it is honestly something that we've probably been waiting for quite a while from the Kraken, and that was a very different look to the power play from what we've been seeing really in the team's history. Yes, it does seem a little bit odd that we finally see this type of approach to a power play and mixing it up like this all of a sudden when the Kraken power play has actually been doing pretty well of late. I mean, not this game specifically, but they've actually been scoring some goals over their last few. But either way, it was nice to see after they saw the power play not work against the Stars earlier on in the game, where they just kind of have this approach of setting up, having the classic one guy at the top playing the quarterback, and then you've got on the first unit Tolvanen with his one-timer on one side, and then on the other side McCann with his wrist shot, and then second unit kind of the same thing with Beniers and then Sprong or whoever the heck's in the lineup on the other side. But this time they finally tried to actually move guys around and get that Dallas penalty kill, which was just kind of happy to set up in the middle and let the Kraken pass around the outside all they want and just keep it out there. So when the shot eventually comes, Ottinger has a good chance of seeing that shot and making the stop. So finally on this power play, and this is the kind of thing that they probably could have been doing, I don't know, throughout last season or earlier on this season when the power play wasn't working and teams were kind of just letting them pass it slowly around the outside all they wanted. They created a lot of player movement with Tolvanen going up and around playing quarterback for a bit, and then Hugh got to the other side. Dunn went down into the play and stood net front with the other two, and then he came back, just circling around, trying to create some confusion and chaos and get the Stars out of just that perfect diamond setup that they had. And eventually, it creates enough chaos that Dunn gets a pass down from where Tolvanen usually would be to Wenberg next to the net. Wenberg gets that pass with that chaos being created, and Dallas a little bit out of sorts, gets it up to a wide open Bjorkstrand in the slot, and Bjorkstrand buries it into the back of the net to give the Kraken the 3-2 lead. Now, I will say, because it came at the end of this power play and in the last power play of this game, I'm not entirely sure whether or not this was actually some sort of change made by the coaching staff that they talked about while this first unit was on the bench and the second unit was out first, or if this was just these guys trying to get something going. Either way, it's something I'd like to see them try a little bit more in the future when they have games like this one where the opposing team is just willing to give them the outside. Either way, though, what it has done for the Kraken in this game specifically is given them another late third period lead, which, as we know, once again does not last. It does last this time until the Stars go empty net. And then with that sixth man on the ice, eventually they do win a faceoff in the Kraken end, hold it in the Kraken end, and then passing it back and forth just create chaos as the Kraken just aren't able to get the stick on it cleanly to get it out of the zone or get an empty net goal, even with Tanev out on the ice. And there's just bodies all over the place in the slot as Kraken players are falling over each other. Grubauer's making diving stop after diving stop on one side of the and the other. Eventually he loses his stick. You've got two of the Kraken defensemen, or at least two Kraken players anyway, sealing off the posts on either side behind Grubauer, which does seem like it's kind of taking away some of his movement in the crease. And eventually one of those posts gets vacated by one of those players who's probably laying out on the ice himself at this point. I don't even know. But a pass gets down to the side to Pavelski, who has a wide open net to shoot out, with Grubauer again down and out after having made a stop. The rebound gets out, they get that pass to Pavelski, and he puts it into the empty net just before Grubauer can get back to try and make another save. And the Stars tie it up, so we're headed to overtime, which, to be fair, although how we get to overtime is certainly less than ideal, with the Stars being the one that tie it late, the Stars are also terrible in overtime this season, with 13 overtime or shootout losses, which is tied with the Flames for most in the entire NHL. In fact, it's enough that coming into this game, although the Kraken were 3 points behind the Stars in the standings, they had 2 more wins. And even still, after this game, they still have 1 more win than the Stars do, even though they're now 4 points behind them in the standings. The Stars have just lost that much in overtime. Meanwhile, the Kraken have won 7 straight games in overtime if you ignore the 3 that they lost in the shootout. But of course, even with all of that seemingly favoring the Kraken at this point, and although, like with the Avalanche game, they hardly let the Stars touch the puck for the vast majority of this overtime, Dallas does technically graze the puck or actually get one whack at it midway through this overtime. But the Kraken hold it pretty much the entire way, getting a couple shots on net, both being saved, winning faceoffs, but eventually Dallas does get clean possession, and as soon as they do, they get down the ice, and credit where it's due, it's a beautiful saucer pass from the corner that goes over two Kraken players, lands net front, where the second it hits the ice, Miro Heiskanen's there mid-swing to whack it off the ice, past Grubauer to win the game in overtime for the Stars. I don't actually know if it's their first overtime win of the season, but it might as well be the number of games they've lost in overtime or the shootout. Either way, it cost the Kraken a point with that late comeback to tie the game for the Stars and OT winner. Of course, the Kraken did have a comeback to take the lead in the first place, but still closing out games has been a problem here of late, where they've now blown 3 points in these last two games in that way, and then there's also going back a ways to that Boston game where they gave up 2 goals late in that one to lose it in regulation. So in the end, I suppose there's kind of two ways of looking at this game. There's the glass half full version where the Kraken, although it looked like they were going to have a hard time scoring once if not twice on Ottinger, especially the way the first period went, and then a good chunk of the second, even with that first goal going in, they do manage to come back and take that lead with a great third period push. Plus, they do at least get a point out of this game against a good Stars team that was coming into this one hot, and even having scored 10 goals against the Sabres in the previous game for them. But there's also the glass half empty version where the Kraken, like we just said, are giving away points in the standings, and even if it may not cost them a chance for the playoffs, as again, they'd have to really fall apart with a pretty easy schedule the rest of the way in order to miss the playoffs entirely, there is a chance to get a good seeding and maybe even win the Pacific, if not the entire Western Conference, if they can get on a run here through the last 16 games. And giving away points like they have in the last two is certainly not going to help that. Regardless, though, of which way you choose to look at it, I don't know that there's too much reason to really spend a lot more time on this game, especially since the Kraken are going to play the same opponent, hopefully with a different but better result here in a couple of nights. So let's just get into the 3 stars, where I do think there's 3 guys worth mentioning here. First star has got to be Vince Dunn. He has 2 points on the night, and like I said, continues that point streak, now 9 games, which ties already his record as a defenseman. And I think I saw the stat partway through the game that he's the first defenseman in the NHL since the 08-09 season to have 2 9 or more point streaks in the same year. So just continuing a great year from Dunn that, again, is going to end in quite a payday as it is a contract year for him. Second star, this is where it gets a bit tougher, but I think I'm going to go with Ryan Donato. Again, coming off of a few games being a healthy scratch and getting right on the score sheet. Just a classic Donato thing to do, but even outside of that, he had a decent game. The fourth line had its struggles here and there, but Donato, I think, was probably the best part of that fourth line. Sprong also had a pretty decent game. Weirdly, Tanev was, I mean, even Tanev didn't play that bad, but Tanev was probably the least impactful of the 3. And then the third star from this game for me is going to be Adam Larsson. I'm not sure if he actually even got on the score sheet. I don't think he did. But either way, he was one of the better players all around for the Kraken in this game. Really good defensively, which is good to see him start to get back to that solid defensive play after a rougher month of February, really, for that pairing of him and Dunn. Dunn just continues to score to kind of make up for some of the struggles they've had in the defensive end. Larsson, though, has been the lockdown of that pair defensively and is starting to get back to that, which is good to see for this home stretch of the season and hopefully into the playoffs. But as always, please feel free to let me know what you guys think down in the comment section, who your 3 stars of this game would be, and whether or not you're the glass half full or glass half empty type coming out of this game. I also think it's more than fair to see how the next game goes against the same team, to see how we feel about the Kraken facing off against another team that's destined for the playoffs in the Western Conference. Very well a team they could end up playing in the first round if things don't get better here over the last little bit and they end up in one of those wildcard spots. With that, though, if you have made it to this point, thank you very much for watching. If you did like or enjoy this video, there are buttons for that kind of stuff down below that help support the channel, so I'd appreciate you using them. And until next time, against the same team, stay safe out there, be good to each other, God bless, and go Kraken!